Alright, so we have installed MySQL itself in Windows and in Linux. But that's not what I want to use for the rest of this series. What I want to use is something called Xampp, and that gives us an Apache server, PHP, and MySQL all on our local machine. So it's basically a local server. Which works basically like if you got, say, a shared server through whatever, GoDaddy, HostGator. And it also gives us a tool called PHPMyAdmin, which gives us a graphical interface to deal with our database. And we'll be using that a lot through this course. We'll also look at some other tools like MySQL Workbench, as well as command line tools. So what I want to do in this video is just download and install Xampp, sometimes called Xampp or Xampp, but I just call it Xampp, and you can get it at apachefriends.org. And you can download Xampp on Windows, Mac, or Linux, so it's multi-platform. We're going to grab the the Windows version. They just totally redid this site too. Alright, so we're going to save this, and it's quite a big file. It's 118 megabytes, so it might take a couple minutes depending on your connection. So I'm going to pause this video and come back when it's done. Alright, so we have Xampp downloaded. Let's go ahead and open the executable file. And basically works like any Windows installer program. Just click next. Now Xampp comes, like I said, it comes with Apache, MySQL, PHP. It also comes with FileZilla, which is an FTP server, a Mercury mail server, Tomcat, Perl, and then PHPMyAdmin, which we'll be using, Webalizer, Fake Sendmail. So we don't need all these. I'm going to uncheck FileZilla, Mercury, Tomcat. We'll leave PHP and Perl. Get rid of Webalizer and Fake Sendmail. Alright, and you can leave them all checked if you want, but that's what we need. Alright, so I'll leave it in the C drive, in the Xampp folder, and we can just close that out, that pop-up, and click next, and now it's going to install it, all those components onto your system. Alright, so installation's finished. It's asking us if we want to start the control panel, so we'll leave that checked. Now this is going to run every time you start up your machine if you install it as a service, and we can do that where these red X's are. We just click on that and we can choose to start them as a service. Your firewall will prompt you, just say allow access. Same with MySQL. Alright, so this should start up with your machine. You do have to start them manually right here, so we'll say start. Oops, sorry about that. And start. Alright, so now we have Apache running, and we have MySQL, which comes with PHPMyAdmin, which we will go over. I'm going to dedicate a section to PHPMyAdmin. Now there's a few things we should do before we end this video. It is installed, but what I want to do is show you where your server would be. So if we go into the C drive and then Xampp and htdocs, this folder is equivalent to your www folder or your public HTML folder on a server. So basically, if you want to build websites or applications with PHP, they would go in here. Alright, so let's go to our local host, which is how you would access everything in your htdocs folder, and it redirects to the Xampp control panel. So we want to click English, and you can access a few different things from this panel. You can access PHPMyAdmin, but what you want to do first is go to security. And by default, our MySQL database the root user doesn't have a password, so you can see that right here. So we want to change that. We want to make sure that we give that user a password. So we should click on this, I believe it's, yeah, this link right here, and our root user for MySQL, which is the super user, we just want to create a password. So I'm just going to give him a password real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4. Obviously, you guys should pick something more secure. And then if we click password changing, the root password was successfully changed. Please restart MySQL. Alright, so to restart MySQL, we just have to open the panel and say stop. You can see that it's shut down the service, and now we want to start it again. Alright, so we're all set. Now there's a few ways you can get to PHPMyAdmin. You can just, I believe you can do it from here, from the Xampp panel, but maybe not. Yeah, down here, tools. Alright, and the URL for this is localhost/PHPMyAdmin, or you can even go to it from this panel. If you go to MySQL and then admin, that'll take you there as well. And you can log in with the password you just created with root. And this is the interface, so we can see our databases. There's a couple test databases here. CD collection, which is a database which has one table for CDs, has a couple entries. Alright, so I don't want to do too much in this section because we're gonna go over this in depth in other sections. So I just wanted to show you how to get this up and running, and this is the environment that we will work in for the rest of the course. Alright, so in this video I just want to go over PHPMyAdmin, and I want to create a very simple database and just kind of show you the areas of the interface that we'll be learning and that you'll need to know. So to get to PHPMyAdmin, if you're running Xampp, you can just click on the little icon here, and next to MySQL you want to click admin. Basically that just brings you to this URL, which is localhost/PHPMyAdmin. Alright, so we can log in as the root user. We created a password for the root user, so we'll log in with that. And you can see these tabs up here. If we click on databases, it gives us a list of all the current databases we have, and you can pretty much create as many as you need, as long as you have the storage and the memory for them. To create a new database, it's as simple as just specifying in a name here. So let's create a database called users. Alright, so if we click create, now we have a database called users, and if we click on it, we can click on it either down here or in the side here. Alright, so what we're looking at now is an empty database. There's no tables, there's no data, there's nothing. So when you create a database, the first thing you want to do is create a table. So in the users database, we should just create a table called users, I guess. And we could call it anything. We could call it people or whatever. And you want to specify the number of columns. Now a column is basically a field. For this table, we'll have, let's say, a first name column, a last name column, and an email address column. I'm sorry, and an ID column. So we want 4. Alright, so if we click go, now we get this empty form where we can fill in our fields. Alright, so like I said, we'll have a first name, and you want your table, your column or field names to be all lowercase, and then an underscore for spaces. Now you could also use the camel case format, which would look like this. Alright, so your first word would be lowercase, and then every word after that would be uppercase. But I prefer to use the underscore method. Alright, but that's not actually our first field. Our first field is going to be ID. And this is going to be a very important field because it's going to be our primary key. And what that means is that this ID has to be unique. You can't have a row with an ID of 2 and then have another row with the ID of 2. This is going to specify that particular row of data. Alright, so we're going to keep the type at int, which is integer, and we went over some of these data types already, but we're going to use int for our ID. For the length, it's kind of universal to use 11 characters for your ID. I'm not sure why, but I just use 11. There's a very good chance that you're not going to need more than 11 digits, because that's just an outrageous number. So I always give my primary key ID fields a length of 11. Alright, so if we keep going over default, we're not going to choose a default. You don't have to worry about collation or attributes. Index is something we do want to set, and we want to set it as primary. So that makes it our primary key. That's what can reference it from other rows. So that's very important. And the last thing we want to do with this column is going to be, we're going to label it auto increment. And what that means is that it's gonna increment automatically when we create a new row. So if you create a new user and the last user's ID was 4, then the new user will have an ID of 5. All right, and it'll keep going up. So that's our ID field. Next we'll have our first name, and that's going to be a varchar, which is basically any kind of text. It can be numbers, it can be letters, it can be symbols, whatever. And we'll give that a length of 255. Again, this is kind of a universal number. Obviously, I know that a first name probably will never have 255 characters, but I've just always used it. Alright, so I mean, you can put 40 or 30 or 100, whatever you want, but I just like to put 255. Alright, and that's all we have to do for the first name. It's not going to have an index, it's not going to auto increment, it's not going to be null, so that's it. Alright, so same with the last name. It's going to be a varchar, also 255, and then an email address, which will also be a varchar with 255. Alright, so that's our users table. Now we can just click. You do want to make sure that you have InnoDB choose. This is a storage engine, alright, which is the default anyway. So now if we click on Go, oh, I'm sorry, not Go. What that did was gave us another column to work with. We want to click Save down here. Alright, so there's our table. Now we can look at the data in the table, which we don't have any yet. Alright, so that's why there's nothing showed here. You can see it has the query select all from users, limit of 30, but we don't have any data yet. We can look at the structure, which is just what we created, the ID. Alright, and you can see it's set as auto increment, first name, last name, email, and it gives us the type along with the number of characters that are allowed. And we can do certain things here. We can run SQL commands. Alright, so they even have a default command in here, which is select all from users, where 1, alright, so where it's actually active, and we could click go, and then that would give us all the users. Alright, we can also do inserts, updates, deletes. We can run pretty much any SQL code that we want in here, and we'll actually be doing that in future lessons, in future sections. We can search, we can insert data. Alright, so normally you'd probably have some kind of maybe a PHP script with a form that would insert values, but you can also use PHPMyAdmin. Alright, so let's just insert something here. The ID where it's auto increment, we don't want to put an ID in there. It'll be put for us. So let's just add a couple names. We'll add a first name, last name, and then an email. Alright, so down here we'll say, I don't know, Kevin Harris email. Alright, and then we can click go. And you can see now it says 2 rows inserted. So now if we go back to browse, we can see our users. Alright, and if we go to SQL and run this query, we also get our 2 users. And like I said, I'm not going to go over queries now. We're going to do that in a later section. Let's see. Now, in an earlier section, I said that you really shouldn't use your root user to do things with. That should just be off limits and just used if you need it. Alright, so right now we are using the root user, and that's the only user we have. Now we can actually add and remove users from within PHPMyAdmin. If we click on server and we click on users, you can see that our root user is here and the host that it's using. Now 127.0.0.1, that's the loopback IP address. That's pretty much the same thing as localhost. Alright, so we don't really need to look at this. If we want to add a user, we can just click add user. Alright, so username, let's say Brad, host, we can just keep as any host. Password, we'll give this guy password. Alright, and you can also generate a password if you want. And let's see, database for user. Create database with the same name and grant all privileges. You could do that if you wanted to. Grant all privileges on wildcard name. So we don't want to do this. We don't want to create a database specifically for this user. We do want to give him all privileges. So you could create a user that could only, let's say, select data, or that could only update data, things like that. If you didn't want the user to be able to delete, then you would leave delete unchecked. But we're going to click on check all because we want this user to pretty much do anything. You can even limit the user's queries by the hour. You can limit updates, connections. So that's pretty cool as well if you want to have certain access controls. So let's just click go. And it says we've added a user. Alright, so if we click on user now, you can see that we have Brad, and this % basically means any host. It does have a password, and he has all privileges. Alright, we can edit privileges as well from here if we wanted. So what I want to do now is log out, and we can do that with this little door icon. Alright, now let's try to log in with Brad. Cannot log in. Alright, so something went wrong. Let me log back in as root. And let's see, let's go to edit privileges. Password. For this, any host, let's choose localhost. Username Brad, password. Let me try changing the password. 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. Alright, create a new user, blah blah, keep the old one. Alright, so let's try that. So now we have Brad for localhost as well. So let's log out. Alright, there we go. So you do have to specify local host, I guess. I didn't think you had to, but you do. Alright, so now you can see we have access to all the same databases. Our users table is here. Our users database with our users table. So that's what I would recommend, creating a new user, not using the root. Alright, so that's basically an overview of PHPMyAdmin. I didn't go into importing and exporting databases yet. We will do that though. And we'll also be looking at a couple other things as well as we go along.